our second guest for this this hour. Phil Cohen is a union organizer and an author, and we are pleased to welcome him to the program. Welcome, Phil.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Phil.
So, Phil, it's my understanding that you are a union organizer and an author. Tell us about yourself.
Okay. Where to begin? I've been in the field for 30 years as lead organizer for what's now Workers United, and has become an affiliate of SEIU. Back in the day with the old Clothing and Textile Workers Union. My title for most of my career has been Special Projects Coordinator. I've been the person sent into, you might call, organized labor's version of Mission Impossible situations, anti-union companies trying to dismantle union locals and union locals crumbling under the weight, done a lot of internal rebuilds, a lot of first contracts. One of my specialties has evolved into fighting professional union busters. When companies try to desert a local, the union sends in me. I'm actually at present in directing a very intense campaign in Eden, North Carolina against Mohawk Industries. And my book, The Jackson Project, War in the American Workplace, is a memoir about one of the most intense and dangerous campaigns I was involved in at a textile mill out in West Tennessee in 1989. And it was a particularly interesting situation in that the ownership of the company changed hands 3 times in the year that I was out there. And each company was more predatory and anti-union than its predecessor, and all had very different strategies in trying to undermine labor relations, and so you sort of get a broad panorama of how unions respond to different types of union-busting tactics by employers, all within a 1-year period. And, for me, I came up the hard way. Okay, I left home when I was 16. I did blue-collar work for 20 years. I signed my first union card in 1974 as a New York City taxi driver, and moved down south and became a city bus driver, and for 8 years was the chief steward of my local. One thing led to another. I ended up getting hired as a lead organizer by the Clothing and Textile Workers Union in 1988. And so for me, having come up the old school way, the union's always been about people for me. Okay, I'm not politically correct. I'm not a Marxist. I'm not a socialist. I'm not an any ist that somebody becomes when they're book learned. Okay, I'm a blue-collar guy who's street smart, and that's what I brought into my work. And when you come from that perspective, it's always about the folks in the local, because you're cut from the same cloth that they are. And so the book is it's a dramatic work about really people involved in very trying circumstances against some very vicious employers, and how it affected their lives, what they went through, how they grew from it, what they overcame. And I guess like any memoir, it's, I guess, a testimony or a confession of the author's own personal drama and personal life while he's in the midst of those circumstances.
Well, I've got your book in front of me right now, and it's a very dramatic and inspirational book, and a very touching, particularly about the times with your daughter on the organizing trail, in your background, your approach to the subject matter. I think you spoke to it well when you said, I'm not an ist of any sort. I'm a blue-collar guy who is trying to fight for justice. You have a quote, and I'd like you to comment on that in
Sure.
this sense, and I'll get to it. But I've read The Art of War. I kind of like. I'm a kind of a student of that book.
So am I.
And you have the interesting quote: "All warfare is based upon deception. The general who is skilled in defense hides in the most secret recesses of the earth." And I'd like for you to talk a little bit about when you're in the midst of one of these campaigns dealing with the union buster, what kind of tactics on the ground do union busters use?
You say what kind of tactics do the union busters use?
Yeah, what do you have to fight against? What do they do to people?
Look, there is no such thing. I'm not even saying it's a rare occurrence. There is no such thing as a decertification campaign that really gets off the ground and results in a petition that's not employer-conceived, nominated, and driven. But, of course, that's illegal, because employers are supposed to remain union neutral in regards to an employee's choice to be represented or not represented. And so they have to go through the facade of working through employees. And so they build a committee of anti-union employees. They're very selectively profiled. They're all people who have what I call a Rodney Dangerfield complex, like they feel they've never gotten any respect, and all of us very insecure people. And suddenly this is the chance for them to feel like they're players in the game. Suddenly they're hanging out with management. They're hanging out with corporate executives. They're hanging out with attorneys. And, of course, the ones who are really in the forefront, they're always promised something. Usually difficult to get anybody on the record to say that. Usually you do find out from someone they told who won't come forward. Very often those promises are in the form of promotion if they're successful in getting rid of the union. What's interesting is that I'd say in more than half of these campaigns that I've done, and not to jinx myself and knocking on wood as I say it, I've never to date had a union local decertified on my watch. And in more than half of those cases, within a year after the decert effort fails, the petitioner, the person who signed the petition and led the charge for the company, doesn't have a job anymore. Because they're really these people who they build up to feel like they're somebody and give them their 15 minutes of fame or their 15 months of fame, as it may be. At the end of the day, they're just pawns being used, abused, and then discarded.
You know what? You're absolutely right, because we had a campaign like that with Comcast, and they deserted from us, and we lost a vote by 1. It was a small group of 30 people, and the thing is, what they started off with was home garaging them so that we couldn't touch them. We had to actually go out on their jobs and talk to them. And then they hired a couple of new people, and before you know it, the campaign went on. They did meetings in the park. They would not let our union rep go to the union meeting in the park. They gave her jobs. And then we happened to get word and went over to the park, and they're like, oh, we're not doing nothing. And even when we brought it to the Department of Labor, they were kind of like, well, they can, they're just having a meeting with their employees, and that employee had a job, so that's the reason why she wasn't able to be there. Needless to say, we ended up losing that. And the promises that they made them, they did not keep. And those people ends up calling us today going, well, what can we do? Well, we can't make them make the promises to you if you get rid of the union that you're going to get your, I think it was $2,000 or whatever it was. And they never did get that money.
It was very interesting. I defeated a decertification effort at a Kmart distribution center in Greensboro, like in 2002. And the petitioner there was a maintenance guy. And as soon as the campaign was over, they ostensibly made good on their promise to him and made him a supervisor.
Wow.
And within a year of that, they got rid of him.
Oh, okay.
And that's just part of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, I'd like to talk to you. I know we have to take a break in a little bit, but when we come back from the break, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what management does on the ground to employees and the amount of money that some people can make in union busting activities, because I'm, not many people may know this, but I'm also a management consultant in addition to being a director of a program called Labor at Wayne. Mm-hmm. And I'm very scrupulous about the kinds of advice I'll give to management. I won't give them union busting advice. But I've been brought into management meetings under pretenses that they want to talk to me about human resource management policies.
Right.
And you go into the meeting and they say, we'd like to know how to decertify this union.
Oh.
And I've said at that point in time, more than one occasion, this is an illegal conversation, that we can't have this conversation. And more than one occasion, I've had some manager say to me, well, my CEO, our competitor decertified a union, and he or she wants to do it too. And so
that is exactly the way these situations start. That's the way the situation I'm dealing with now started. And one of the things we can talk about when we come back is the lack of consequences for engaging in this sort of illegal activity.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people realize that they not only put employees' jobs on the lines, they put managers' jobs on the lines.
Absolutely.
And they say basically that if a union organizes this plant, you're gone. Or if you don't work getting this plant decertified, you're gone. And so it is very heavy-handed, and there's no protection for managers in this regard. And the only sense they'll do is stand up if they have any ethics or integrity to do so.
You're absolutely right. And fighting union busters is not a game for the faint-hearted.
No. I'd like to get at the brass tacks when we get back.
Yes, don't go anywhere. You're listening to Union Members Radio, and we'll be right back.
Gonna stand my ground. I won't be turned around, and I'll keep this world from dragging me. Well, I won't back down. No, I won't.
Welcome back to Union Members Radio. This is Kim, and I'm here with my co-hosts, James Dennis and Dr. Merrick Masters. On the line, we have Phil Cohen, who is our guest, union organizer and author. And you fight union busters, so we're going to get back to that. Merrick, I know you.
I was just going
to
ask you, what do they do to employees to create a real intimidating environment, to either try and stop you from organizing them in the first place, or to decertify them?
Okay, let me first address decertification, because actually that's what I'm dealing with right now. And I've actually run a lot more campaigns against union busters coming in after there was a local than doing new organizing. So I've done a lot of first contracts where you sometimes kind of deal with the same folks as those that try to bust the union. Sort of, you have a union, but they try to prevent you from getting a contract. But look, so they have a group of employees who they're working through to try to get a petition signed. One of the things they do is allow them what's called free rein. Every company has rules that you're supposed to stay in your department and leave employees alone in other departments, and everyone's supposed to do the job they're getting paid to do. And you get a certain amount of break time when in the break room or in the parking lot you can do whatever you want. But they give the anti-union committees free run of the plant, essentially pay them to walk around the plant and talk to employees in various departments and try to get them to sign the petition. They also, in various ways, convey to the general workforce that management supports the petition and you're going to look better in the eyes of management if you sign it. Now, the job of an investigator such as myself is you got to prove it. You got to connect the dots. Simply knowing that a company is behind a decertification effort is like the police knowing that someone's dealing crack, but they can't prove it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it becomes a union rep's job to prove what, in a corporation's mind, is a very carefully crafted and well-concealed program. What's happened in the current situation I'm dealing with, if I can refer to that, it's a Karistan rug plant that was taken over by Mohawk Industries in 1992. They were so confident that certain employees were just weak links and wouldn't have the character to come forward and be whistleblowers, that they actually sent members of management out to try to encourage these people to sign the petition on their job, and in some cases becoming very coercive and threatening when they wouldn't do it. And what I'm especially proud of in terms of the leadership of the local and folks who came forward is we got a surprising number of people targeted by management as weak links to, with a certain amount of coaxing and education, come forward, drive with me up to the office in Winston-Salem, and give affidavits to the National Labor Relations Board that have provided really compelling evidence of half a dozen members of management, from department heads to corporate human resource people, directly soliciting signatures on the petition.
Now, let me ask you a question. Let's say they find out, the National Labor Relations Board does its investigation, and that can take quite a bit of time, right?
You know, the initial investigation is usually a matter of a few months, so we're very, very close to a decision at this point, and I'm very optimistic about the outcome. And if, in fact, they find merit to the more substantive of the union's allegations, such as direct management solicitation, the free rein argument, they will dismiss the decertification petition as having been illegally obtained through signatures having been illegally obtained through management involvement. The petition is referred to as tainted.
Now, what happens to the perpetrators of this?
See, that's one of the most interesting pieces of this puzzle. Because essentially, the only penalty that a company or its attorneys face if you're exposed in a corrupt decertification effort is you lose, and you can't decertify the union local. You're stuck with it, and you have to come to a new accommodation with the union. And, oh, my God, you have to put up a posting inside the plan for 60 days saying, we will never do this sort of thing again. And, you know, that's analogous to if you rob a bank and you get caught, you have to give back the money and put up a sign on your front door saying, I will never again rob a bank. So where's the incentive not to be a bank robber?
Well, I think that's one of the problems with labor law. And let me ask you a variant of this. In this case, in this case that you're involved in now, you were able to get some people to come forward.
Yes.
And, you know, testify to the fact that you had management direct participation in this.
Yes.
Does management sometimes, I mean, do they handpick people within the workforce to be, you call them anti-union committees. They probably don't label them that, do they? Are they labeled something else where they look, they look pretty nice and they're walking around just talking to people?
Look,
and
as I said,
they're not
they
management?
handpick people with a certain personality profile, insecure people who want to feel like they are somebody. You know, often people with a lot of anger that need a way to channel it. And they essentially form them into a committee, the same way a union representative like myself will develop an executive board. In a sense, they develop an anti-executive board. And it's their job to go out and try to get people to sign enough signatures to call for a new election, which, of course, you know, once you're having an election, it's on the company's playing field. They've got a 24/7, captive relationship with the workforce.
Now, will they, with today's technology, will they use social media to communicate that message?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Will they use social media to communicate that message today?
Actually, no. I mean, union organizing is still kind of a hands-on, boots-on-the-ground situation. It's all done through direct communication. Everything that I do within a campaign that's of any tactical use is like on the ground, me there in town dealing with the people.
So they're still very careful about, you don't want any footprints around. Is that basically it?
It's not just a question of that. I mean, in a blue-collar world, people don't, you don't move people through Facebook. You move people through face-to-face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one thing we're taught at CWA is you got to do one-on-ones. Like I said, when I invited people to general membership meeting to get a good turnout, it was me walking up to people, looking them dead in the eyeball, going, "Hey, you're going to be at general membership meeting on blah 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 because this is what we're talking about." The moment they gave me that commitment, they walked through that door. So you're absolutely right. That one-on-one is the best way to do it. I don't know if people feel guilty or what.
What they're doing is organizing. And, they usually have, not always, but often they hire professionals, union-busting lawyers. Sometimes they have staff on the ground themselves, though in this case it doesn't seem to be what's happening. And so, they've got professional organizers organizing against the union, as opposed to organizers organizing for the union. And, it always comes down, every union campaign, whether it's new organizing or, fighting off a union-busting attempt, it always comes down to a war between fear and hope.
Absolutely. Phil Cohen, union organizer and author, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, my brother.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
Excellent. Have a great night.
Hey, same to you.
Bye-bye.